Welcome back to another chronicle of a young athlete. Of course, I'm not a young athlete anymore. I'm not famous or rich. I'm just a man sharing stories of his past. Stories that can be dissected to help someone better themselves, or maybe just to provide a laugh. In this chronicle, we have the story of two young Tigers on a rising team. This Tigers team was run by a family member, which made things a bit complicated. This man, Babe, was a legendary sports icon from around the way. A man well respected by his peers and the community. He was a man of strict discipline, but he knew that to be a leader, such things were necessary. By this point, he had been coaching youth football for over 10 years, building astounding teams with very few resources. He never let a lack of means stop him from giving back, but that's a story for another time. On this particular day, Babe was leading his 3rd and 4th grade team to another victory. Although the day ended in a win, it concluded with a shock for the two Tiger Cubs. The coach was a pusher by nature. He always did what he could to get the best out of his players, even when they were unwilling. He didn't use physical violence or name-calling. That wasn't his style. He simply liked dropping you into situations just to see if you would sink or swim. The game was over, and we were ready to go home. The two young athletes, Peanut and Ray, both had big plans for that Saturday afternoon. Peanut played quarterback and Ray played fullback. Both were excited to head home, change, and hit the carnival at the park in their town. They grabbed their pads, broke the huddle, and headed for the exit. At that moment, a coach from another team approached Coach Babe. This wasn't out of the ordinary. A typical early morning game could often result in us staying hours late because other coaches wanted to pick Babe's brain. After some time, Babe headed toward the boys and asked if they were ready to go. They smiled and said, "Yes, sir." Babe looked down and said, "You see those kids over there?" The Cubs looked at the field and saw 6th and 7th graders warming up for the next game. Babe said, "We're going to watch those boys for a few minutes, then we'll head out." This burst the boys' bubble. They usually didn't mind hanging around, but today they had plans. As they watched, Ray took off his shoulder pads to get comfortable, knowing this would take a while, but Babe stopped him. "Hey, you guys can play an extra quarter if you want. It's not illegal."
Both Cubs shook their heads no, signaling they had had enough for the day. Babe replied, "Oh yeah? Well, I was just asked if you guys would like to be all-time running backs for the team about to play." Fear hit the boys' faces. The difference between a 4th grader and a 7th grader is massive. While it's been done before, it takes an exceptional mind to bridge that gap because the size difference is evident. These kids were literal monsters. The Cubs were in flight mode, but they couldn't let Babe see it. Sure enough, he told them, "Go ahead and play for a quarter or two. You'll only be playing offense." He explained that in this league, once you pass 5th grade, there were weight limits to carry the ball. Every player on the older team was overweight, meaning they had no one to play running back. Without Peanut and Ray, the older team would have to forfeit. The Cubs agreed, put their helmets back on, and went to the bench. Meanwhile, the players on the opposing team saw these small kids and looked like hungry wolves licking their chops. In football, the eye test can be misleading. You can look big and be soft, or look small and play big, but sometimes you're just big and badass. These guys looked at our boys like a wolf looks at a rabbit. From the first snap, the Cubs were treated like pieces of meat. The older kids were just as fast as the Cubs, but many times stronger. They were body slamming them and suplexing them. Just when the boys thought they had the speed to get away, the defenders would take a perfect angle and smash them into the sidelines. It was a brutal beatdown, both mentally and physically. Peanut was running for his life at quarterback, while Ray was taking every hit possible at fullback. Babe watched from a distance. He knew what the Cubs didn't. They were more afraid of the size of the other team than they were confident in their own abilities. Ray recalled a timeout in the huddle where they hadn't gained a single yard. Peanut said, "This is ridiculous. Look at the fur on their legs. We don't even have fur on our legs yet." They continued into the second quarter, taking a pummeling. When halftime finally came, they walked over to the huddle, looking for Babe. He walked up, thanked the other coach, and then looked at the two Cubs. "Have you had enough?" he asked. They didn't want to show how eager they were to leave, so they hesitated, but Babe knew. He told them to take their pads off and head to the car. They weren't broken physically, but they were mentally exhausted. As they drove off, the Cubs started venting about the blatant face masks and extra jabs they took after the whistle. Babe looked at them and asked, "How do you think you did?" Ray said, "Not that good. Peanut tried to be tough. We could have stayed and finished." Babe chuckled. "No, you guys were scared before you even stepped on the field. You checked out before you even saw what you were dealing with." He continued, "More than half those guys were only beating you because they imposed their will on you. With their size, you were fast enough to outrun them around the corner. But you chose to slow down because you thought you had to make a move on someone twice your size. Sooner or later, you're going to have to stop tiptoeing and bear down." The Cubs were quiet. They realized that when they played kids their own age, it was effortless. They were the ones doing the imposing. But when the tables were turned, they didn't know how to respond to the eye test. Babe knew they weren't being tested enough in practice because everything was familiar. They weren't necessarily better. They were just comfortable. That day, they learned about selflessness, helping a team that would have otherwise wasted their weeks of. Practicing that the game is about what you can do, not what you look like you can do. Babe told them he was proud. He admitted he thought they might have backed out before the first quarter even ended. The two Tiger Cubs cracked a big smile. Babe didn't hand out compliments easily. Football has always been more than a game. It's life. You are going to be afraid of getting hurt, and you are going to face problems bigger than you. You might forget a conversation or a school assignment, but you never forget what you go through. Experience is the one thing you can't ignore.